Did you know? The first 3D Kirby game wasn't planned to be Kirby 64. The first 3D game was going to be a title called Kirby Bowl 64, which was planned as a launch title for the Nintendo 64. The game was a direct sequel to Kirby's Dream Course, and it featured a multiplayer mode where 4 players competed to knock each other out of a small arena. The title Kirby Bowl 64 is actually an extension of the Japanese name for Dream Course, which is called Kirby Bowl in Japan. There were also segments in Kirby Bowl 64 where Kirby rode a star like a surfboard. This feature was expanded as development progressed, and the title morphed into the unreleased Nintendo 64 version of Kirby's Air Ride. Air Ride was shown at trade shows and had several magazine previews, but the release date was continuously delayed until the project was put on hiatus. According to Satoru Iwata, the technology developed for Kirby's Air Ride was incorporated into other games by Nintendo. Leftovers were used for a golf game, and the camera movement was somehow implemented into the Jack and Beanstalk project, which eventually became Pokemon Snap. After the hiatus, Kirby's Air Ride director Masahiro Sakurai went on to develop Super Smash Bros. And left the Kirby franchise in the hands of other HAL developers. Years later, Sakurai revealed in an interview with Nintendo Dream that he was tired of making sequels and was worried about the direction of the games industry. Sakurai said, "It was tough for me to see that every time I would make a new game, people automatically assumed that a sequel was coming. Even if it's a sequel, lots of people have to give it their all to make a game. But some people think that the sequel process happens naturally. When I look across the entire games industry, I think we're at that point where we can't get away with being lazy." Aside from voicing King DDD, Masahiro Sakurai had almost nothing to do with the development of Kirby 64. In an interview for the official Nintendo of Japan website, Sakurai stated he avoided even looking at Kirby 64 during development because he feared he would be compelled to make comments and interfere with the vision of the staff. The game was instead directed by Shinichi Shimomura. Shimomura began his career at HAL Labs working on the rail shooter Hyperzone, then later worked under Sakurai on Kirby's Adventure. 2 Kirby development teams were formed after Kirby's Adventure. Sakurai went on to develop Kirby Superstar, and Shimomura developed Kirby's Dream Land 2. The Kirby games that he directed, Dream Land 2, Dream Land 3, and Kirby 64, are often referred to as the Dark Matter Trilogy by fans, referring to the reoccurring villain in the 3 games. Following Kirby 64, Shimomura went on to co-direct Nightmare in Dreamland with Sakurai, but mysteriously vanished from the video games industry after its release. Another common thread in Shimomura's Kirby games are the animal companions. Originally, these characters were intended to play a much larger role in Kirby 64, but they were eventually relegated to cameo appearances as transformations via the Stonecutter power. Unused graphics in the game's data contains portraits of the animal friends, with what appears to be a date, October 30th, 1998, nearly a year and a half before the game's Japanese release. Early concept art from a Japanese exclusive art book depicts Adeline painting Ku into existence. Additionally, an unused remix of the Animals Friends themes from Kirby's Dream Land 3 can be found in the sound test mode of Kirby 64. Some early concept art for the game shows Kirby riding atop a giant whale and climbing an enormous spider web. More early concept art and screenshots reveal that King DDD, Waddle Dee, and Adeline were intended to be playable characters in the main story. Waddle Dee had the ability to lift objects and enemies over his head, an ability given to Kirby in the final game, and Adeline was likely going to use her power to paint objects into life to protect her. However, in the final version of the game, King DDD was the only character other than Kirby that's still playable. Early builds of the game also had players controlling Kirby with the analog stick and the frequent use of the Z button. This was changed after playtesting, as developers saw that children had difficulties with the control scheme. Kirby 64 was also originally developed for the Nintendo 64 disk drive system, but like many other disk drive games, it was converted to a cartridge game after the commercial failure of the 64 DD. According to project manager Takashi Saito, Kirby 64 went through 2 major phases of development, and it was in a complete playable state almost a year before its release. The team decided to not release the game at that point to give themselves more time to polish the final product. An early trailer of the game, shown at Space World 1998, features some beta versions of Kirby's powers. At one point, the stone power-up retained Kirby's ability to jump while transformed. The Ice Bomb power was originally just a generic chunk of ice that exploded as opposed to the snowman in the final version. The Stone Spark ability originally turned Kirby into a computer chip that would kill enemies upon contact. A minigame was also scrapped before the game was released. It was apparently a timed-based music game where each character played a different instrument. There are a few regional differences between the Japanese version of the game and the international version. The optional HUD screen number 4 was modeled after Japanese calligraphy, but was changed to a crayon-like theme in the international versions. Similar to other Kirby games, some Japanese-based foods were also changed in the international versions. The sandwich health item was originally rice balls in the Japanese release, but oddly enough, Waddle Dee is still seen eating rice balls in a cutscene for the international version. Kirby 64's fifth world, Shiverstar, has some famously dark secrets. The ice-covered planet appears to be based on a post-apocalyptic Earth. The planet has one moon, like Earth, and the 7 continents can be outlined in a lighter color than the oceans. The Nintendo of Japan's website once mentioned the planet's inhabitants being forced to leave after a disaster struck, leaving behind decaying stores, abandoned factories, robot enemies, and animals in test tubes. Many fans speculate that the post-apocalyptic Earth could be a subtle commentary on nuclear fallout or climate change. The sound test features an unused audio track that some have speculated was intended to play on the TV screens in Stage 3. The audio is a sped-up reading of the famous Japanese poem called Iroha. The words seem to fit the decaying theme of Shiverstar, and it translates to, "Even the blossoming flowers, colors are fragrant but they will eventually scatter." Did you also know that Kirby appeared in a game before the first Kirby game, Kirby's Dream Land? To find out more, watch the DidYouKnowGaming extra video on screen. And hey, you've been listening to me this whole video. My name is Gerard Khalil. I'm known as That One Video Gamer for my show, The Completionist. And if you want to check out my stuff, here's a link right here. I did a video on Kirby 64 as well. That's it, that's all, and we'll see you guys next time.